Morning everyone. My name's John Puller. I'm your chair for today. So we'll commence the proceedings with a karakia from Councillor Rangiahu. So before she starts, can you hear me at the back? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Morena tātou. He honore he korore e mangarum ki ngai te whenua e whakaaro pai ki noa tāna takatua amene. E whakamoi me te atoana mātou ki a koe i hua mai mana ki tana, e te akana mātou e koe i nā rā kua pārea tēnei tāno mai ki tēnei rā. Rore ki tō ingoa tapu āmini. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora.
Thank you. So welcome councillors. We're a bit thin on the ground today. Welcome members of the public. Our program's going to be slightly amended, so we'll just go with the flow. But I'll just start off with the notices, and you'll note that we are live streaming now with our meetings, and public gallery attendees' presence implies your consent to be being part of the broadcast. And further information about live streaming protocols can be found on the council's website. Under health and safety, if we have to vacate due to emergency, we follow the doors where the green lights are and assemble in the Peace Park, which is over by the museum. Bathroom facilities are on the left as you came in, the sliding doors. And that's that for that one. So apologies, we have apologies from Councillor Tanchos and Councillor Amick, although Councillor Amick may come online later on. We have online Councillor Isles and Councillor O'Brien, and Councillor Dukes needs to go after the break. So can I have a mover and a seconder for accepting those apologies, please? Councillor James and Councillor Boynton. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Passed. So in the acknowledgements, Mayor Luca has an announcement.
Yes, I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Dennis for receiving the King's Service Medal on the weekend. Well deserved. He puts in 110% for his community and in the Fens. So thank you, Councillor, on behalf of all of us. Thanks very much.
Well done.
John. Sorry, Chair.
For James. Yeah.
I'd also just like to acknowledge one of our district sporting heroes in that, Mitch Rees, who's not only is he national superbike champion, but he's also over in the Isle of Man at the moment competing, and he's actually come in at made history by being the fastest newcomer on the track. So he was averaging, I think it was close on 200 kilometres an hour around the 37-mile course. So yeah, another proud moment for our district.
He's done well, actually. Thank you for that. Next item 5 on our agenda is conflicts of interest. So do we have any conflicts of interest, team?
No.
There being none, we've got no public forum as such. So the next item is item 7 on our agenda, 7.1, hearings and submissions for future water services delivery options. So I'll invite Andrew to kick that one off, but what we'll say is that for submitters, just so you're clear, groups have 10 minutes with 5 minutes of questions, and individuals have 5 minutes with 5 minutes of questions. And councillors, noting that we originally only had 5 minutes, if you can just keep your questions to as they are, rather than having a speech with it as well, please. We do have time today, but we'll try and follow the line. So, Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora. I'm holding the seat for David today, who's stuck in Wellington due to the bad weather. So thank you, councillors. We received, I think, about 84 submissions, and this morning we were supposed to have about 9 people speaking. A couple have dropped off, so we'll change the program around for that. 84 submissions, I think, compares reasonably well. Rotorua received 54 submissions, and they had 3 people speaking. So when we're planning these things, we know everyone's interested in water, but we don't know how many submissions we'll get, and we wondered about hearings, whether we needed 1 day or 2 days, and we can get through it in a couple of hours this morning. So I don't want to take away anything from Walter, who wrote the report. So Walter, I'll just ask you to briefly speak to the purpose of the report. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Yeah, look, there's not a whole lot to add to that, to be honest. I think it's a very brief report. It really just introduces today's hearings event. And as Andrew's pointed out, we have received 84 submissions, and as he's mentioned, that does compare reasonably well to our bigger neighbours. So, you know, there was a reasonably a good amount of effort put into an education campaign to support this, with a number of events out there in our district as well that people, you know, manned and attended so that people could come and speak to members of council. Today, just to add to what Andrew's introduced, is really just about receiving the information, about hearing the information. Attached to your agenda, you have the 84 submissions that were received, and of course you'll hear from some speakers today. The deliberation, so the debate, is set for the 26th of June. That will be the next stage in this process. At that meeting, we'll provide you with some more analysis of the themes and threads that have come through the submissions collectively. So today you'll hear from the 8 or 9 speakers, but we'll provide you with an overview of what those themes are on the overall from all the submissions on the 26th. And at that meeting is when we'll be looking or asking you to provide direction for the option going forward in the water services delivery plan, and that is a very significant decision for our district. But today's about receiving information, as I said. So that's all really. Just hand back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Walter. Anything else to add?
If you just get the resolutions, received.
You want to do them now?
Yep.
Thank you, Walter. So we have the resolutions which are on page 10 that we'll move now. So I'll read the resolutions. 1, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee receives the hearings and submissions for future water service delivery options report. And 2, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee receives the written and oral submissions. And 3, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee notes that following this meeting, a deliberations meeting is set for 26 June 2025 to consider the submissions and provide direction for the development of the water services delivery plan. So I do have a mover. Councillor Dennis, seconded Councillor Jukes. Any debate? Pretty straightforward. I'll put the motion if that's the case. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. So, presenters, when you're giving your presentation, Mr. Dash here will raise his hand when you've got 1 minute to go, just so you know where you are. And if we can stick to time, will be good. So we're going to start, and it's adjusted really. So we're going to start with Peter Minten, then Malcolm Whittaker, then John Howard, then Gerard, and then lastly David Dowd. At this stage, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Can you give us the page number, please, Chair?
It's just the page number for Peter Minten.
Oh, sorry. Peter's submission is on page 77.
Thank you.
Floor's yours, Peter.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Morning all. We'll also speak to the Whakatane Action Group submission, but I will start off with my private one, and then I will, when that time slot is over, I will speak to the Whakatane Action Group one.
So the Whakatane one is on page 28, just so you got that. Thank you.
I personally strongly disagree with the option offered in the consultation, document, the preferred option 1, yes. So a multi-council CCO, because I believe hope is not a strategy. Financial benefits are not guaranteed. Our influence is highly uncertain and will always end up with some kind of minority stake in any board in the future. And we are not, say, on top of that, we are not certain that we can implement the needs as described in our LTP 2024-2034. Also seeing there is not much love on first sight, so why does the Whakatane District Council needs the help from the Department of Internal Affairs to get a mediator to approach the other councils, as suggested in several reports? For me, it's obvious nobody else or no other council is keen to start a financial relationship with us. Big is not always beautiful. If you engage in a multi-council CCO, you will lose your local skills and local synergies, your local knowledge. And big is beautiful also means big contractors are beautiful. So you will lose also your local contractor. So at the end, better to deal with a devil you know than a devil you don't know. And set up your own unit within the current council organization. So you will keep all your synergies with other council departments. You're more in charge on how you deliver on your free waters delivery plan. And you will retain local knowledge and skills. A suggestion has been made in several press releases to set up some kind of New Zealand Free Waters Mutual Supporting Agency. You can read that, say, from Taupo District Council, Whanganui District Council, Rotorua District Council. They all sounding similar messages in the local press. In my submission, I have provided a link at the bottom, how they did it in Holland 98 years ago, by providing a technical agencies to support all the water unions. And water unions are the second oldest democratic institution behind the English Parliament. They were already established in the 17th century, and their sole duty is that everybody in Holland has to keep their feet dry. So they got down together in 1928 and organized themselves with a supporting agency, because you need to know that all the councils have similar processes, use similar types of chemicals, require similar engineering, and require similar hardware, and also requiring similar skills. And I use that as a little example, as in page 8 of your submission to the water standards. I quote, "The council lacks internal water quality scientists to assess the proposed standards are appropriate for receiving environments in the district." So what better is that you have somewhere sitting in an agency where you are the mutual owner of, with all those other councils, to have those skills over there. Yeah, just as a little example. So this ends my private submission.
Do you want to carry on with the Whakatane Action Group one?
Or you will want at the end the questions?
We have a question from Mayor Luca.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Government's made its sort of desires known. I mean, it's their reform, so clearly they have indicated what they would like, but they've left the door open to us. What do you think, what's your opinion on relationship with government that we have to work with if we decide to go in a direction that they don't like?
Yeah. I think the most easiest,
As a community, I mean. Yeah.
as a community. Yeah, I think that's, say, when you talk about funding of all the required investments in free waters. Yeah, the government has the biggest balance sheet, so the biggest capacity absorb debt, but I would think that would be, say, the only relationship we should have with government. We should do it all on ourselves. It's mentioned, or it's named local water done well. It's not regional water done well or national water done well.
Thank you for that, Peter.
Councillor James.
Yes, thanks for your presentation, Peter. I note that you've got, one of your wishes is equalise the Whakatane, Hopi and the Plains water schemes. I take it that is after your millions have been spent on connecting both. I'm interested though in who would be the greater benefit, Whakatane, Hopi or the people on the plains?
My opinion, and I put, say, an engineering's hat on, is that I looked at the security of supply for Whakatane or Hopi. Yeah, it's based on a single treatment plant which taking surface water from the river, which is far more complex than drilling a deep bore and have water from that. And it's a standalone. Whakatane or Hopi is supplied from standalone, and we see every summer when, let's say, the river flows along, we see already negative aspects of there. And for the treatment is also much more complicated because you deal with far higher turbidities and that kind of physical properties of the water you intake. So for me, it was, as an engineer, logical to find another source. And I think council engineers already have put some proposals around where they would take the water from. So that's mainly for me. And I believe also, because you're securing the supply for the town, they should also bring up some part of the cost of doing so, because you guarantee their security of supply. You don't have to hand out those reduced water notices anymore if you do it right.
Thank you. No further questions? So now you've got your Whakatane Action Group presentation?
Yep. The Whakatane Action Group, the same. We strongly disagree with the preferred option. Financial benefits are not obvious for the first 10 years. Martin Jenkins was not prepared to share the financial assumptions when asked by our mayor on the IPC meeting on the 10th of April, in which Nick Davey spoke to. Multi-council CCO creates multiple instances of uncertainty. First, in governance, you might end up with only being a minority at the board table. And we, as an Action Group, refer to the current struggles around our hospital as a similar observation. Will there be benefits of scale? Yep. There is some evidence provided from Wellington Council clearly says that not. They're paying, say, about twice the price for a certain length of pipe than the national average. There are questions around financial separations. Do we end up paying for other districts' water infrastructure? And having, say, a multi-council CCO adds a distant layer of bureaucracy and management not connected and embedded in our community. A statement of expectations, in our opinion, means nothing. If you all decide to go with a multi-council CCO, which we will accept, then make sure you have a supply level agreement with the board. And fill it up with what our current L2P plans are. So we have the opportunity to go it alone with the current in-house free water structure embedded in our council organization. The council can set their own priorities, can set up a balanced free water budget to be self-funded and not to be drowned in future debt. But how to avoid it? I think the council should also look within our community for members who have, say, specific financial expertise. Similar what's now going on in the engineering space, when certain experts from the community are discussing together with council engineers all the plans and proposals on the table for the future. So our conclusion is that the council should not rush into a CCO or with another council, but set its own unit within its own organization. So we go for the option 2. And now put my former mill manager's hat on. I made some observations, and that's in the disclaimer of all the Martin Jenkins reports. And I quote from the disclaimer: Martin Jenkins and its directors, officers, employees, agents, consultants and advisors will not have any liability arising from or otherwise in connection with the report or any omissions from it. Then they state the client, which is the council, the Whakatane District Council, irrevocably waives any claims against them in connection with such liability. My question, and I know I come from a different business culture in the Netherlands, is this normal practice when you engaged in consultancy? Because what they say, in my opinion, is okay, we have a nice report, but we don't put a stamp of quality on it. We're not 100% certain, and if any uncertainty leads to any future legal arm wrestling, then we out. So when I was in a position of a paper mill manager, I would offer them a coffee, thank them for the effort, and show them the door with their report. But that's just an observation. Yep. So I'm not sure. I never seen it in. I've been working 14 years at the mill in Kawarau. I never engaged a practice like this. And yeah, obviously our CEO is not sitting around the table, otherwise I would share it directly with him. Any questions?
Councillor Boynton.
Oh, tēnā koe, Peter. Thank you for your submission, or both submissions. I just have a question. Realising that this is one part of new reforms from the government, and there are a wide range of reforms that directly impact us as council, sorry for the little speed, that's going to severely impact the way that councils can receive revenue in the future. Would Whakatane Action Group be supportive of increased rates if this was to support a localised internal business unit?
I think because there is already, and some other speakers will also mention it on the future rates and how the future rates will be distributed. For me, it's clear. When you look at the past decades, we build up a big backlog of maintenance work, so we need to invest. And that means the rates we saved for the wrong reasons over those couple of decades need to be put up now because we have a catch-up to do. We have almost, I believe, 90 million of backlog in our maintenance work, and the money needs to come from somewhere. And it's just looking into the past. Did we fund it at that time when it was needed? So in my opinion, when you talk about depreciation, you put a pipe in the ground, you know, in 60, 70 years, I need to replace it. So you start already building a little savings account for it. And apparently that has not been happening. What I understand is that the average lifetime of all the equipment, the weighted lifetime is 22 years. So you should at least budget every year 4.5% of the total value of your water assets as depreciation. So that's 4.5% of 465 million, what's currently in the council books. So you should already have between 25 and 30 million on depreciation expenses only, just to pay for future costs. And then I'm not talking about growth and expansion. That's just maintaining your current assets. So yes, yeah, the money needs to come from somewhere.
Thank you.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Thank you, Peter, for your presentations. In the WAG one, in second or third line down, it talks about there appears to be no economy of scale. In fact, Wellington City Council pays double the price per kilometre of pipe than the national average. That just seems really insane, doesn't it? You would think that for any council, they're always putting stuff out for tender to try and get the cheapest price. Why would they have been paying double the national?
I think it was in some kind of press article about, I believe Wellington Water is a part of a multi-council organisation, and it was a newspaper article in the Post, which is the local Wellington news outlet, and they were just describing that. But I agree with you, when you have developed scale, you should think you cheaper out, but the example from Wellington proves that it's not the case always.
It seems like a bit of an anomaly, but that's fair enough. If you come down towards the end, the second to last statement made, it says that we should set up a balanced budget for Three Waters Department to be self-funded and not deeply indebted into intergenerational debt. I'm interested in that, is that the prices, especially since COVID, have gone through the roof. And when you look at the fact we've only got 17,000 ratepayers, I think it's 16,900, something or other. Do you think that's are you in the statement suggesting that we take on no debt, but we only fund out of what the revenue is for the water?
I think that should be, say, the end goal, that anything in-house should be, say, feeding itself with revenue, and that maybe, say, the part of the rates revenue, your volumetric charging, that should be used in the end, so that it should be, you say, ring-fenced within your council organisation. But what I just explained to the answer to Councillor Boyton, we have a lot of catch-up to do from previous decades, and we don't have budgeted money for that.
No, we don't.
So I think that's up to you guys, how you fund that.
I think it's only recently we started adding depreciation, and because that had been wiped out to try and drop the rates. But I also believe in the past we've blamed previous council because they tried to set a zero rate rise, and in doing so, that's where we've fallen behind in our water infrastructure. So given the fact that we're behind, we're behind with massive debts and all that going forward that we have to pay off first, with only 17,000 ratepayers, do you, like I agree with you, we shouldn't have debt, we should be able to do it, but with that small amount of ratepayers, the amount of debt that's been built up over previous councils, do you think it's realistic to say that we should balance the budget and not borrow anything, given that some of the stuff is really urgent to be done, and when it needs doing, it needs doing, that there must be an ability to borrow a certain percentage of money, but with a limit on it, say?
I'm not 100% of where those limits would be then, but in our opinion is what I just stated before, say it needs to go without the additional borrowing, but I agree with you, we have a lot of catch up to do for that. And I think you as a council, you need to look into that, how you want to make up for all the wrong decisions from the past, because that's something you carry with you. And it's not something of the last 10 years, maybe already the last 20 years
Yeah.
or 30 years.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Whittaker?
You're a process engineer,
Yes.
and so when you design a plant, it has a nameplate service life. But we all know that plants can run a lot longer in some instances, and that infrastructure under the ground also, while we can talk about 50-year life, we now have better techniques for monitoring and doing surveillance on some of that underground infrastructure. So, I mean, would you not think that we can, I mean, a water plant is a bunch of swimming pools, pumps and some automation. They can be, you can sweat them quite substantially. I mean, I can quote examples from Germany where nuclear reactors service life approximately 60 years, but in reality they've taken them out of service and they're in pristine condition still. They could run for another 60. There is some of that sort of thinking that we could do, don't you think?
I think also you need to think about risk. Germany, as I'm aware of, doesn't have so many earthquakes. So I still stick to the opinion that you should budget for a certain life, and if the plant exceeds that, then that's say an unbudgeted surplus for you. Yeah, that you budget for, replace it after 50 years, but maintenance or inspections tell you so it can go for another 10 years, but you have already then the money, because you never know exactly when it will break down. You can do a little prediction, but it's not set in stone.
I have a question, Peter. Some of your discussion, you talk about having a standalone separate organisation for the water, which makes sense. So that's almost leaning towards a CCO, really, isn't it?
I think there is some, in my opinion, there are some subtle differences between a CCO and an in-house department. Yeah, a CCO is still, say, council-controlled organisation. You still, say, have some kind of governing entity, which could be a board, and you could say nominate between you, say, who is sitting on the board, but the CCO will still, say, add some more layers of bureaucracy compared with the current situation.
Thank you. I think in answer to your earlier question about all care and no responsibility, we quite often get those disclaimers, and I think it's more about if something unforeseen is there, and there always is, I suppose, so it's covering backs, I guess. Anyway, you have a question, Whittaker?
Nothing in life is certain except for death and taxes, but a lot of people don't pay any tax. That leaves only death. This report by Martin Jenkins is probably full of uncertainties. Would you not think? What's your opinion on the uncertainty of financial predictions? Being an engineer and all.
I'm an engineer. I know, say, economy and financials are a little hobby for me, but I'm not, say, the appropriate person to comment on that. Maybe you should ask somebody else of our action group, who is far more suited.
Right, so thank you for that, Peter. Enjoyed your presentation, and we'll take that on board. So before I welcome the next presenter, I'd just like to welcome online Councillor Emmett and our Chief Executive Steve Purdier and General Manager David Bewley and another presenter, Reuben Cohen. So Reuben, I'll call you up later on if you're okay with that. So our next presenter is Gerard van Beek. Thank you, Gerard.
Page.
And his submission is page 116.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, councillors, for being here today and taking submissions. I'll be quite honest, I'm sitting here as a very frustrated and quite annoyed former councillor. I am very surprised at the speed at which staff are proposing that we try and amalgamate the plains and the urban schemes and to do equalisation. I've given you a copy of the tables that I had in my submission. I admit that I made a mistake with respect to the equalised schemes, which is the last section on that table. I used the non-metered charge rather than the normal fee for the normal fixed fee for Whakatane, and it changes the numbers just a little bit, but essentially the proposal to go and move to an equalised volumetric rate between plains and Whakatane is going to see a significant shift in rates burden from Whakatane to the plains. Now, the table in the submission that you've got online, you'll see that roughly $1.6 million will be transferred at the stroke of a pen between Whakatane and the plains. And if we listen to the consultants that you had here 2 weeks ago, one of them pointed out quite correctly that 60 consumers on the plains use 1 million cubic metres of water a year. I'm disappointed that the consultant didn't point out that that works out to be 14,000 cubic metres of water per person. And if you change the volumetric charge from 50 cents to $1.50, you've just dumped $14,000 worth of additional rates onto those guys. When I watched the meeting and watched it again, I found disappointing that councils had quite a limited knowledge on the concept of the allocations that were used in the Awakeri scheme and the allocations that were used in the Braemar scheme prior to that. And to be quite honest, today they're irrelevant. But what is not irrelevant is levels of service. And if you're proposing to equalise the Whakatane scheme with the Plains scheme, then the level of service has to be the same. Which means that when Councillor Dennis hops onto his fire truck and he goes out to the Thornton and tries to go and hook into a fire mains, he will get us 750 litres of water a minute. He won't. If he wants to go to the airport to go and get 750 litres of water a second, he's dependent on 60,000 litres of additional storage that Whakatane has put in there. The level of service between the plains and Whakatane are catastrophically miles apart. So if we propose that you want to equalise the two schemes, then the levels of service have to come up to roughly the same. Now, I've included some additional information with respect to the Awakeri scheme, and the consultant quite correctly pointed out that this scheme, I think, was very well managed. Debt was well managed. Debt was fully repaid in 2014, and we've taken on additional debt. There's been some council mistakes with respect to succumbing to the noise from the Whittaker residents, forcing Paul's Road water to go to Whittaker when it didn't need to. The Tahuna Road bore was perfectly adequate to supply them arsenic-free water. We now have an arsenic treatment plant sitting at the Braemar Springs, and we have forced upon the consumers an additional cost when we knew that 90% of that water was going to cows and cow sheds. I think this is a council that grasps at any free money that it can get hold of, and that the $1.3 million of supplementary water funding that we got to put in that arsenic plant is actually a poor investment, because we had to put another $4 million beside it. I've gone and put some personal responses to questions that were asked at the last meeting, because I feel that staff inadequately answered them. And so this is a clarification for members to get it right, I think. The long story short is that you are creating a trap for the plains consumers. Bevan made it quite clear at the meeting that the objective, stated objective, is to try and get Paul's Road water to Whakatane. In 2014, the Plains Water Committee said, give us $300,000 and we'll put a big pipe between Paul's Road and State Highway 30 and you can start transporting that water to Whakatane. And the advice of the local staff here said no, because it's not part of the water scheme. This is money that you can't have. And so only a small pipe has been put in. At that time, it was going to cost somewhere between $8,000 and $17,000 to bring water across from Paul's Road to Whakatane. And council said it was too expensive at the time, we're not going to do it. Next year, if you go down this pathway, you will build that pipeline and it won't cost $17 million, it's going to cost 28. And you're going to finance it over 25 years, which means that the cost is 56 million. And then cunningly, because you've equalised the schemes and 2 million cubic metres of water are used here and 2 million cubic metres of water are used on the plain, all of the guys that have been on the Plains Water Scheme for 40 or 50 years are suddenly going to have to pay half that cost. To be very honest, today, right now, equalisation should be off the table. The money that you were going to take off us, the $1.6 million by equalising the volumetric rate, should be used to go and upgrade the services on the plains, and that fat pipes get put all over the place so that when the fire truck goes to the airport, it can suck as much water as it needs for as long as it needs it. So that's the thrust of my submission today. The Plains Water Scheme, when it was in private hands, I think was very well managed, and when it came across to council, there have been a lot of poor decisions made. So, do I want a CCO? Possibly, but certainly not with a lot of councillors on board.
Thank you, Gerard. Questions? Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, Gerard, for your presentation. Good to see you at the table again. Yeah, the Plains Water, I agree with you with parts of it, and well, I agree with you wholly, but the initial reason why it was set up has changed over time, in that it's not just supplying farms now, it's supplying houses, and a lot of houses and towns. If we sort of kept it so that it was more for farmers, that pipe work, a lot of that pipe work's sort of 45, coming up 50 years old.
Yeah.
From memory, a lot of it was PVC. So it's probably coming up for replacement. Do you feel that farmers alone are going to be able to pay for all the replacement of these pipes?
Oh, yes. This scheme, if we go back through time, has been very debt adverse, and they have paid for things as and when they needed it. When the loan was repaid in 2014 or thereabouts, there was $1 million in kitty, and that $1 million was used to go and establish the Paul Road installation. And there was some stupid decisions made around the property, having to subdivide it and then reallocate the subdivision, just nonsense. And when it came to go to the regional council and say, we would like 240 litres a second, staff here, or the recommendation in here was saying, we're not going to send the water from Paul's Road to Whakatane. And the regional council turned around and said, well, you're not getting 240 litres a second, you're getting 61. And that 61 litres of water from Paul's Road is enough to service Edgecombe. And because of a lot of noise, we're sending that water up to Whittaker, which really didn't need it. Now, when we have a look at the Plains Water Scheme today, we've actually got two schemes. One is Paul's Road to Edgecombe, Whittaker, and the other one is Braemar water going across the plains west of the river, and the Awakeri extension that heads off to the airport and nearly halfway down White Pine Bush Road. Now, somewhere along the line, those pipes need to be upgraded. Some of them are PE, some of them are PVC, as you say, is brittle. Some of it is asbestos cement. And we should be replacing those pipes in exactly the same way as we've replaced some pipes in Naya Place and Edgecombe, but we've seen a lot of PE going here around town in the last 3 years, or 4 years, from 2019 when you started McAllister Street. So, you know, we have an opportunity on the plains with pristine, cheap water. We can afford to go and pay $1 more and get all of that pipe work done straight away, rather than paying $1 more and propping up Whakatane.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor O'Brien? You need to unmute yourself, councillor.
My apologies. Morning, Gerard. Thank you for your presentation. I'm one of those noisy ones that you're referring to. I led the charge for the Tiko residents and the Tiko people because the Tahuna Road, at that time, Tahuna Road water supply was not up to standard.
No, not for us.
At the same time as the Paul Road was. So we asked if we could be connected up simply because Tahuna Road wasn't up to standard, and nor was the Braemar water scheme that we were on. So I guess my question is, where did you get your information from, Gerard, at the time? Because I led that, and we were connected up to Tahuna Road. Was upgraded.
Yeah, no.
We were taken off the Braemar water scheme.
All right, so
simply.
So we had staff in town here that went and explained what was going on. One of the staff went up to Te Teko and said, Te Teko is connected to Braemar, which it technically is. In fact, all of the schemes are interconnected, and Braemar gets turned on from time to time when the Tahuna Road bore could not supply enough water to Te Teko. And that then led to the opinion that Te Teko was on Braemar, and Braemar had high arsenic, and therefore the community in Te Teko should not be treated like cows and should not be drinking arsenic-contaminated water. The reality is that the water coming from Tahuna Road is low in arsenic and is of the same quality as Paul Road. The quality issues that you may be referring to have got nothing to do with arsenic, and I'm discussing the arsenic issue here, not the quality of having a surface bore that's exposed to the environment. That bore now has been upgraded, it's now sealed, and so the water coming from Tahuna Road is of the same quality as Paul Road, and so therefore technically we have 2.5 schemes, if you like, Paul Road's Tahuna Road, and then we have the rest of the plains. But no, I was slightly annoyed when we had to borrow another $2 million to send water south to Te Teko.
Thank you for that, Gerard. I just take exception to those of us who are looking up our own affairs in Te Teko to be called the noisy ones. I want to serve your references. Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, all I can say is that staff made a technical error when they said that Te Teko was intimately connected to Braemar, and the reality is it was intermittently connected to Braemar.
Well, thank you, Gerard. No further questions. We take on board what you're saying, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I'll now invite Reuben Cohen, who's online. Reuben, the floor is yours. And your presentation is on page 41.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for trying to accommodate my needs for today. I really appreciate the effort that's been made. I did ask that something be passed around to people so that when I refer to it, you'll be able to see what I'm referring to. I'm not sure that that has happened. I'll try and proceed without that. Just short amendments to, not amendments, additions to what I had said and in my submission, and especially one technical of minor quality item. Now, what I'd like to say is that I agree the water infrastructure needs to be updated and taken care of. I don't agree it is affordable as it stands from what you placed before us. That's the ratepayers. Martin Jenkins gave you an affordability figure which is not substantiated. And my submission is really about affordability. Today, I bring you some figures which show Whakatane district has very poor productivity rate, which affects affordability, and already ridiculous debt from council and short-sightedness in the proposed and preferred path to take, which was, keep kicking it down the road. Martin has used a median household income for which to base his predictions. Now, I tried to get from Martin some substantiation, asking him questions, and he passed it back to staff at the council. And I got a message from Mr. Bewley, thank him for that. But quite honestly, it came out like a black box, I don't know what was inside that box. There were just a few words bandied about, and I wasn't sure he understood. I certainly did not understand what Martin had done. But I want to say that affordability is the main thing, because you've come to us, the ratepayers, and given us two choices, and you have a preferred choice. Well, one of the things you're selling it on is affordability, and I'm saying that it's been done wrong, as simple as that. And what's wrong with it is that they've taken the median household income and said, we'll do the calculations on this. What calculations? I have no idea. That has not been made clear, and that's what I asked for, and it is still not clear at all. But I'll tell you that just choosing the median, because it is there and because it is used often in many calculations, is not good enough, because you have to make it apply to the situation. So if we look at the first page of the extra bit of paper that I thought I saw someone handing out over there to you, it shows that the median, and this is from Stats New Zealand, okay? And they based it on the census, because that's the last one that they've gotten. That's 2023. If you take the median number, which is 83,000 for household income, and then base affordability on that, just take a look at the top number there. 744 households have an income of 20,000 or less in a year. Now, if the 83,000 income can afford what Martin says they can afford, do you really think that on 20,000 a year, you can apply that to the 744 households? It looks to me like there's going to be a lot of default going on there with no provision at all. I think that Martin has chosen the wrong number to base this stuff on, but I can't say for sure because I'm not privy to the way he's done it. All I've been told, and you can see that because I printed that in my original submission to you. All I can see is that he's included this and he's included that, and he's done it by modelling. And to me, it's wrong to do it on the median household. And I've tried to give you an extreme example to show you why this is the case, which is that tiny table underneath the bigger table. And median is just the middle. If we consider the middle being 100, and on either side of it ridiculously large and ridiculously low figures, you can see that that median does not represent the other figures that are there. And that is the case that I'm making, although it's not so extremely put. But I'm saying to you, using the median in this particular instance is certainly going to give a lot of hardship. And the kind of hardship I'm talking about is not just I'll go into debt, but it's the kind of hardship where I'll lose my house because I won't be able to afford this. This just won't happen. Now, I've also included excerpts from various media showing that productivity, for instance, is very low in Whakatane, but I don't know how the productivity was used, so I can't comment any further on that. GDP as well, and I've put down there where you can find these particular things and how they show, especially the one which says that KiwiSaver is being misused to a great extent because people are dipping into KiwiSaver now in higher numbers than using it for first home affordability deposits. They're using it now to pay bills. And that shows you what the affordability of the situation is. That they're raiding all sorts of things, and myself included, to try and meet bills. I've had insurance for 30, 35 years, whatever it is that I had a house for, and in the last 2 years, the natural hazards premium, just the natural hazards premium for contents only, has gone up 200%.
Reuben, I need to call time now, so if you just want to wrap up, then we can have a question.
Okay, I'll wrap up as quickly as I can on this one.
Thank you.
I'm just saying that basically, don't think it's affordable until you've looked at the whole thing again. And I also think putting the cart before the horse, because the central government is forcing this issue at the moment. Because if you put all this money into infrastructure, and then we have to migrate inland because of the changing patterns in the world, all that would be wasted. So I think it has to be rethought out as to how it will be needed, because you'll put in new stuff, you'll make it work. I hope you won't go with the Western Bay of Plenty district, because that's exactly what the regional council did. They then ignored us. Edgecombe had its flood because it didn't repair anything. They are now being taken to court, as you are as well. And you can see that if it goes into, if we partner with a big city, well, we can't expect very much out of them then. But thank you very much for listening, and thank you for helping me to make the presentation, as I could not attend today.
Thank you, Reuben. I can confirm that we have received your handout, so thank you for that. Any questions? Mayor Luca?
Yeah, thank you, Reuben. Look, I totally agree with you on the arbitrary nature of this assessment of affordability, and that we're really dealing with an income distribution, so you really need to know what the income distribution curve looks like. And so the issue of what is fair and what needs to be paid for, because obviously you address the urgent needs, but how do you square the circle? What would a fairer system be then, in your view?
Yeah, okay. The first thing is to push back at central government, as some other councils are actually doing, and saying, no, we're not going to cancel this, we're not going to cancel that to save money. They said, no, we are going to cancel various things because central government has said, you must stick with your 10-year plan, etc. And instead of saying yes, okay, say no, that's not okay, because if we start putting money into coastal settlements at the moment, and then find we have to migrate inland, that's going to be all wasted, and we're going to just debt upon debt upon debt, and we'll never be out of it. So I think you have to go back and say, okay, what's available for going back inland? Because when you look at Whakatane, it's got 0.5 meter or under most of it of water capacity. That's how high the water level is under Whakatane at the moment, according to brands. Now, as the sea level increases, and it'll probably be in my grandchildren's time, not my time, but if we have somewhere to retreat to, then at least we can start the process now, just acquiring the land or, working on that, do some of the important, urgent replacements where we are at the moment, but start putting infrastructure into somewhere else. Now, for that, there should be, and I think there are funds available that will allow us to work in that direction on a climate change basis. And so, as I said, I don't think that this is a feasible thing without our debt just being crazy. I hope I've answered it to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Reuben. Appears to be no further questions, so thank you for your presentation and taking the time to give that to us, and we'll be deliberating in due course on the 26th. So next up is Malcolm Whittaker, and Malcolm's submission is on page 39. Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Morena, kia ora tātou. Thank you, Mr Chairman and councillors, for allowing me to make this presentation. Right, so if council decides to go with the Western Bay and the Tauranga councils, would they be able to definitely borrow at a lesser rate of interest than now? Possibly. But it's speculation, and we've all seen it before, a similar sort of instances where we can do this, we can do that, and it doesn't happen. Do staff not feel that they are competent enough to manage these services by themselves in their own operational capacity? That's what I ask. Or have you been sold that bigger is better? And when you look around the country, bigger isn't better. A classic case was Wellington with their water services. So how come that blew out? Because no one had a good look at it and said, are they accountable to our ratepayers? Okay? You are accountable to our ratepayers, all of you people sitting here. And how you spend our rates is very important for those people out there that don't have the money, that rents will go up, and they'll go up, I tell you. Central government will change its condition to put rents up, renters will go up. This is council's core function, okay? And what do you want to do? You want to put it into a quango, a CCO. This is what staff said anyway. Joining other councils means more travel, meals, meeting fees for councillors, staff, and you won't be having just biscuits and cups of tea. You'll be noshing up like they do in some of these meetings that they have. I believe you have some very competent staff in the council. Jim Finlay, who I spoke to at the Ohopi Hall Craft Market, very good engineer. David Bewley, spoke to him as well. He's been with you for years, very dedicated, good managerial skills, years of experience. CCOs only lead to ballooning rates. That's what we'd be looking at down the track. Believe me. If you want council's interest rates, why not put a remit to the local government? Remit council, take it to central government. Get them to establish a fund. They could throw a few billion there and charge you 3% interest. Over time, that interest would accumulate and they'd have money for lots of councils to borrow from. Or you could go to central government and say, hey guys, why don't you forego the 15% GST we pay on water rates to you? Okay? Because it's only money going around in a circle and it doesn't need to do that. The local government council should have the guts to get up and take on central government and push back. Or you could say, why don't you set it up like NZTA? Right? We make applications to a similar body and we apply for funding. Now, they might give you a percentage and say you throw in how much you're going to throw in, which you can do from your water rates, and pay for the infrastructure. And we all know we've got ageing infrastructure, like I live in Hopi, Harbour Road. Every summer, council's down there dealing to the pumps. And I go, whoop, there goes money down the drains, down the sewer. This year, they went in and they replaced pumps and return valves because they weren't working. Now that system's probably been there over 40 years, 45 years maybe, and it's breaking down. And that has happened, probably it's in sandy soil, things are rusting, etc. But what council didn't foresee was the development of the park, holiday park down the end of a Hopi Spit. Every summer, with all those visitors, there's a hell of a lot of tutai going down that drain, and those pumps just couldn't handle it. So they probably were not designed for that volume of waste sewage.
Just want to wrap up, Malcolm?
Hey, I'll try. Okay, so over the past few years, let's take Matatara as an example. I spoke to Councillor Dennis before the last election. He said it would cost then about 19 million to do it. I would say it's probably jumped to 25 million, okay? You're all waiting for central government to give you a chunk of money. They won't do that because it sets a precedent around the whole country. What have you done the last 12 years? When I was a regional councillor, this issue was on the table then. We had meetings at Matatara then. What have you done? All you've done is spend 8 to 9 million on buying some land for a treatment plant. You've gone round in a circle. I would think with the technology we have nowadays, you could install really good filters on all the septic tank systems. Treat it with UV light. That's what they do up at Waihi with all their waste sewage up there. Then it goes into a wetland, because it has to. By the time it goes from the wetland to the ocean, it's full of bugs and bacteria again. So there are systems out there. Council at the moment, when you look at its whole its debt, it's $177 million. That's a hell of a lot of money, and you're just going to grow it. And as Reuben said, there's a lot of people out here that can't afford it. So I think very seriously about whether you have a CCO or whether you have the guts to get up and say, we can do this ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes. Yes.
You talked about central government funding, and I've been going on about this for 5 years at least. I believe that central government should fund public infrastructure off its balance sheet. It has a higher credit rating than any council in New Zealand and the LGFA, so it would be more efficient. But it's clear they don't want to do it. Why do you think that might be?
Because they think it's council's responsibility to fund it, and it is, to a large degree. Now, if we go a long way back, and I think, I could be right or wrong, the Clark government went around and said to councils, you don't need to have depreciation, go and spend it. That's what councils did. So money that had been put aside for depreciation was spent. Because they probably said, well, we'll give you the money later on. Any other questions?
Other questions? Okay, Malcolm,
Thank you for your time.
thank you for your time and presentation. So next up we have John Howard, and John's submission is on page 29 of our agenda.
I think I was next.
We've rearranged the program, sir. Thank you, John.
Morning, team. Why it matters and local board have done well. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Look at the opportunity that is currently presented to council and what it means to our district. It is local water done well, so let's just do it. Because of it, if it was under Labour's water reform, it would have disappeared from council's business by now. I think all this time spent looking for another council to come to your party has been wasted and could easily have been spent heading up an in-house controlled business unit that will have these councillors as the board. By having it all set up and separated, it will be an independent business unit that will and can function to a balanced budget. This way, you are moving forward, but also have a unit that could easily be shifted into one of the shared services if the opportunity arose. The opportunity is not so you can borrow more to a greater level of debt, though. That will only increase the price of water. The consultant's report shows little, if any, benefit of a merged unit is, I would say, fairly accurate. In fact, possibly the only organisation that could have a greater buying power would be a water services bulk purchasing arm to LGNZ. But that would possibly be adding something of value to its purpose and well out of their scope. I think you councillors need to start taking the bull by the horn on this issue. There's too much staff-prepared reports. You've been in this role for almost 30 months now, and some of you have been sitting here a whole lot longer. You must have an inkling of what is needed. Start with the dedicated general manager, who will lead the way in setting up the business unit. No overlap with other roles in council, but someone who can communicate with other departments like roading for better maintenance within roading. Standalone and separated. Someone who can set up priorities to make it affordable, sustainable and achievable, with councillors' board of directors having monthly funding and work reports, which they have approved in advance for work starting, but in such a manner that it follows normal good business management. With my limited knowledge, I can see drinking water and grey water are directly related, so must make funding budgets simple. Stormwater may be a little different, but could have some sort of costing system very similar to what the regional council uses. So it is not a matter of reinventing the system, but adapting what is currently in use. But not as another tax to all ratepayers, as we already pay enough regional council rates. Should we pay for other areas' capital expenditure under a CCO? If we were a shared CCO, I think other districts would like to ring fence each other's costs, and we certainly wouldn't want to pay for their upgrades. So what's the difference within our district? Should we ring fence each scheme's costs to those ratepayers? I think equalisation needs a lot more discussion with detailed facts and not some wishy-washy consultation documents like we've seen with the likes of this one. But one with real facts so we can all be aware of the costs and who is paying and from which rating base, that is, the water entity or the District Council general rating. I know fair is not always equal, and equal is not always fair, but to be fair, you need to show us the facts. A balanced budget, this means local repayments of all loans, including intergenerational ones. Remember, if this was out with a different organisation, it would all be separated out by now. So make it happen and quit looking for dance partners. I think our three waters is one thing we should try to hold on within the council. If we look at the Regional Transport Committee, the Regional Council, and then our hospital, then once we lose our control, we lose all control. These three organisations will be what will happen to our water if we lose it. The opportunity is now. Get focused and get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Questions?
Thank you.
No questions. Thank you for your presentation and your time this morning. Next up is Chris Sides, and Chris's submission is on page 122. Thank you, Chris.
Good morning, Ena Hangatira, Tanakoto katoa. I'm very disappointed that you have chosen as your first preference the multi-CCO. It seems they got a terrible record in Wellington and Auckland and Christchurch. It also seems possibly to be a complete waste of time pursuing it, in that the Eastern CCO idea, all the other three parties all have indicated they prefer to keep the water in-house, so it's not going to run easily, and it's worth thinking about whether they haven't got some wise perspective. The Western CCO, you're handing yourself over to Tauranga and the Western Bay of Plenty, who have 84% of the population, and we be 15%. So that means that we'll have a very small say, particularly when there are tensions, natural tensions between an urban and rural areas. They are very rapidly expanding and will demand priorities. And so we are likely to be starved of money, and especially capex. If you look at the history of the DHB, when the Eastern Bay of Plenty DHB was merged into the Tauranga one, basically DHB has had a very bad deal, as it's becoming more obvious now in regard to obstetrics and things like that. But it has also always, I think, been regarded by management in Tauranga as a bit of a pain in the neck and outlier. And I think the same could be expected if you would attempt a multi-CCO. I think it's also appalling to spend 8 to 10 million up front to set the thing up and then create a silo that will block off the natural things that can be done together when you keep it in-house. CCOs as a whole have, well, they're a misnomer because they call them council-controlled organisations, when in fact they are council non-controlled organisations, and they were set up by Rodney Hyde and act as a camouflage for privatisation. They if you cast your mind back to the savings banks, we had one once, it went into an amalgamation under pressure from the government and turned into something that was countrywide. All the savings banks surrendered to it except the Taranaki one, and they then got swallowed up by Australians, and well, it's just basically big foreign investors, and the result is 8 billion a year is sucked out of the New Zealand economy. Now, the big risk is that the CCO, once you lose control and ownership of the pipes and bits and pieces around the place, the CCO will be available for privatisation by the government. And if you look at what happened to the electricity companies, that's exactly what's happened to them. They're now basically foreign-owned and run on a system where the intention is to minimise capital expenditure and maximise profits. And if you look at the UK, where water was privatised along the same system, first of all by going into a regional water authority and then going into private companies. Those private companies have drawn out 60 billion in debt and paid 53 billion in dividends to themselves. And it's and the companies are now infamous for the amount of sewage they dump into the water and rivers. I think somewhere I've got a number. Last year's spillages, 2021 spillages were 372,000 spillages. The next year there was 301,000, and they pay no tax. And the government don't do anything about them, because if they do, they'll incur the 60 billion debt that they've built up. They started with zero debt. So I think privatisation is the thing you've got to have top of your thoughts, and how can you obstruct it, which is what Taranaki Savings Bank did. And I think you should do the same and keep it in-house. If you have in-house, you have all your local knowledge, all your local contacts. The CCO will probably have very poor relationships with the iwi, whereas you have spent years building up contacts and building up connections, and that is a valuable thing. I believe that keep it in-house and don't go for any sort of CCO, and certainly your preferred option doesn't seem to be a runner anyway. So that's really what I think I really wanted to say. One final point. If you have a CCO, you will end up with no water engineers owned by the council, and in the event of floods, you won't have experts on hand, and you won't have a lot of the heavy diggers and heavy digger operators that floods demand get into action pronto. So it's very foolish, I think, to give away that sort of resilience. Keep it in-house. As the previous speaker said, you've got some very good engineers who've been around a long time and know their business, and I'd ask you to do that.
Thank you, Chris. So any questions? Mayor Luca?
Chris, thanks for your presentation. You opened up by saying you're very disappointed that we chose the multi-CCO option. You do realise that nothing's been actually chosen. We chose to consult with indicating a preference.
Well,
We could have done it the other way around. It's sort of a little bit arbitrary. But it's quite telling today that almost every person
use
is...
the word exactly better and say you prefer it rather than that you've chosen. I agree. It was,
Yeah. So every presenter today has basically been not for the preferred option, which is quite telling, but we're here to listen to what the community's got to say, so thanks for coming along.
Any further questions? So, there
Thank
being
you
none,
for
thank
your
you,
attention.
Chris, for your time. Appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, we have David Dowd. Thank you, David.
Page.
Yeah, we'll go break after David.
Move a page, please, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Andrew. Oh, page 33.
I do.
Good morning. For me, it's been very long, and I'm quite sure those of you at the top end of the table want to go and have a cup of tea. You've done enough to deserve one. Let's not talk about the personal comfort of those people back there who are feeling the same. Does that sound a bit grouchy, Mr. Chairman? Yep, that's the way it's meant. I have just a few notes. I'm strongly opposed to the proposal of option one being the one that you eventually vote for, if that's the way I understand it. Already this little piece of paper means very little because somewhere along the line in my reading yesterday, I picked up that there were 125 submissions, and with only 10 submitters choosing to speak, I'm now told this morning, as I walked in, that there are only actually 84. Which is it? My getting older, or is it actually 84? How many? Here's a question, hopefully resolved this morning. How many submissions were there? 84 or 125? In any case, it is pathetic. And that's because I believe that there has been totally ineffective advertising and information provided. The public would appear to have a pretty well disregard of council's advertising. Did they turn up for those meetings? I didn't. What are the stats on those? Have a good look at those. This is a fail. You cannot possibly make any decision on the basis of the responses you have had. Three Waters is close to the largest expenditure this council may face for a couple of decades going forward. I think the way in which those things of which I became aware in the Beacon were soft soap stuff. It was as though the council was tiptoeing around the room to try and soften the blow. No big emphasis was given to this is a huge investment and nobody should be smiling about it. It is grim. How you put it together ultimately should not be your decision. How dare you make a decision on the basis of the information you have accrued so much? I acknowledge that that must be large, but it's not enough. Why are other councils doing the right thing in pushing back, particularly on datelines? You have had a lot of time on this job, but you're not ready. And we've got an election not very far away. You've just got to think of who might be out there who will occupy some of your seats come the end of the year, and what you will pass to them as some sort of going away present. They won't thank you for that. They might thank you if you say, we've taken it this far, we refuse to go any further on the basis of what we know. Just about there. Questions for you. What do you know as the governors of this district? What do you know of conversations between our local government people nearby? Are we talking officially or otherwise with either a Whittaker council or Kawerau district council? Have there been meetings on record that I have missed, or is it upcoming? That's it. There's a lot more that I'd like to go on with, but I think you've had enough for one morning. Just don't do it yet.
So, thank you, David. You're entitled to your opinion, of course. And so what I will say is that there have been meetings with the Whittaker and Kawerau about joining together, but they, at this stage, wish to go their own way. So that's all in the mix.
Have we heard that in any way, shape or form? Has it gone out to public?
Mayor Victor?
There have been conversations. Nothing is locked in stone yet. Kawerau and the Whittaker have chosen to consult with the inverse of ours. I mean, as a preferred option being standalone, but that's not locked in stone either. They are also going through a consultation process, and so they're wanting to hear what their communities have got to say.
So everyone wants to listen to everyone else before they do anything. Is anyone ready for this?
No, well, anyway, nothing needs to be locked in until 2028.
Thanks for listening to my gripe, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, David. So we'll take a break now, and we'll come back. Our next presenter is due at 11 o'clock. It's the last one. Thank you. Mic on, thank you. Well, welcome back, and we welcome Dianne to the mic, and Dianne's submission is on page 81 of our agenda. So the floor is yours, Dianne, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. There's some people who've met me before with Sullivan Lake and know me well, but this is my personal presentation. I think we agree on one thing, that water is our most precious resource and we need to do something about it. Edinburgh has recently said the next world wars will be on water because we can't live without it. So I think we all agree there's a problem with the water and it needs to be fixed. That's about where our agreement lies. I do not believe in a new multi-council controlled organisation. The lack of control is incredible. I've lived in Ottawa when it became a city, a super city. Everything went up. Rates and property taxes, as they're called there, went up with no visible benefit and no improvement in services. And when you lived in one of the smaller areas, you got less. I lived in Auckland when it became a super city. Once again, rates went up. And I lived there when Metro Water was formed, being a water organisation. And hello, we got a $50 reduction in our council rates and then a $600 Metro Water invoice. So all you're doing is passing the costs on. And by having a whole nother executive, you are going to increase the cost for the ratepayers. Now, I know you're all ideas in the headlight. You can see that you will be able to double your borrowing by being part of a group. It was very clear in your presentation. That was one of your key things you liked. And also efficiency, although I don't think there will be any efficiency personally, double exec, etc. But you can't keep borrowing off the ratepayers. Do you know that my grandchildren will be in a situation where most of their rates will be for interest? You know, we have to take responsibility now. We are living today. We are drinking clean water. We are pooping in our toilets. And you're semi-looking after stormwater, but we won't go there in this session. But they are costs that we need to bear today. Do not push them down the road to our grandchildren. New Zealand is broke. Our cities are broke. The people are broke. We've got to live with austerity and live within our means. And I would prefer the council only but able to borrow 240% of the rates and did the water and made a lot of savings out of their current stuff. We should do nothing at the council for the next 10 years unless you are thinking with every penny you spend, is this improving the water? The water we put in the river, into our treatment station, into the sea, should be as good a quality as the water that comes out of the sky. And those of us that live here now need to pay the price for that to happen. Stop throwing it down to the next generations. It is not fair on them. And I am absolutely sure, I'm an accountant, and I spend my whole day at the moment telling businesses to survive with less. And yet I see a council that puts the rates up 11.7%, and very little of it is for water infrastructure. It's a crying shame when inflation is at 2.9% and your people are hurting. You just need to do more with less, and more being water only. It just needs to come to the top of our mind that we can't leave the place worse than we found it, that people today must pay the price of living today. I'm preaching to you. I believe this is the same issue the whole world over, but we have to start here. We owe it to our grandchildren that no change will happen unless it comes from the bottom. Is that my 10 minutes?
Thank you, Dianne. Questions? One from Councillor Dennis and then Councillor James. Thank you.
Thank you, Dianne, for your presentation, for the passion you did it with too. I was really interested in what you said, that I think you said it was when they introduced Metro Water in Auckland, you said that your council rates went down $50 and your water costs went up $600. The following year, did your council rates then start to track up?
Of course they did.
Do you remember how much?
I don't know. Rates in Auckland were insanely cheap compared to everywhere in New Zealand.
Yep.
Insanely cheap, which is part of the problem that Auckland has now. But yes, and also when we used to get charged by the Auckland City for the water we took in, when we went to Metro Water, we paid 100% of the water into our house, but we also paid 80% for waste. So the water component of our bill rates was huge compared to what it had been before. So if you just think about Metro Water and all the executives, there must be $10–15 million of executives, which I am absolutely certain if Whakatane made a council-controlled multi-organisation, not all 35 people in water at your council would be gone, that you would still find a reason to keep many of them. So there is no benefit, it's just all cost, without anything being done. Take those executive salaries and spend it here. How do you even know if you can borrow 500% of the rates that it'll be spent in Whakatane? How good has regional council been for you? I would say an abject failure looking at Sullivan Lake. So keep control, keep it in-house and make it a priority.
Thank you.
Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Dianne. It's very good, and I agree with a lot of what you have got to say. With regards to the borrowing, as far as I'm concerned, it's not all about how much we can borrow. They're only talking about the limit, but I'm not. I would rather pay as we go rather than be borrowing just for the sake of borrowing. I don't mind borrowing for new pipes and people pay for it over time, but I just want to go back to one of your comments. You said, "Oh, we're not talking about stormwater," but we're talking about drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater.
Oh, don't get me started. That's a whole different topic for me.
This is all part of the same.
It is all part of the same thing, but you need to go look at Sullivan Lake to see how successful that's been.
We've also got to look at the drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater at the likes of Mirapara, Ruatoki, Waimana.
Agreed.
All that comes out of the rates.
But we need to pay. It comes back to the fundamental position that we need. I'm a citizen. I don't want my rates to go up. But my rates need to go up because it is costing the council more to exist if they're dealing with replacing infrastructure than they're currently collecting. And so you and I are in violent agreement about not borrowing for the sake of borrowing. It's the borrowing that scares me the most because we in New Zealand are paying hundreds of millions and multi-billions actually in interest. Interest is not productive. It is not going to help our community. We need to put the rates up. You need to sell it to the, unfortunately, sell it to the population because it's not going to be popular. But you also have to show that you're spending it on water. And you need to be far more transparent than you are at the moment. everything, like I said before, everything, every decision. Shall I have a coffee today? How's that improving the water? Shall I do whatever I'm going to do? Is that improving water? We need to fix 50 years of lack of infrastructure. And it's not going to be pretty, and I don't envy you as councillors selling this story.
You know, I agree with you completely, and one thing in life is everything has a cost.
Yeah, but stop
And
pushing it down to the next generation.
we can't keep doing it, no. Thank you.
Mayor Luca.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Diane. Nobody likes to borrow, but the government is pushing us down this path. They hang out this carrot of borrowing money. They themselves, however, are preaching a different sort of catechism. They're saying, we want to keep our debt to GDP ratio down, but you guys should borrow money to do what you need to do in water. So as an accountant, we've got an interest rate that we pay. So if you're borrowing long term, and against that is working inflation. I'm just wondering if you would talk about how inflation affects the real cost of money over the long term, because that's one of the arguments that's used.
Well, I mean,
you get what I'm saying?
I kind of do, and I feel really sorry for councils, because when the Ministry of Works got canned in the 80s, that was the beginning of the end for infrastructure. I'm old enough to understand the government gave you a shit deal, sorry, to be real, we're talking about poo. They gave you a really bad deal, and we have suffered from it ever since. So I can understand a little bit of lending to get things underway, because you own an asset over a period of time and you depreciate it and it lasts for more than 1 year. I understand that. But like I say, we just can't keep borrowing. We are broke. The government is broke. I don't think they understand it quite yet, but we are broke. And the broker we get, the more interest rates go up, because we are a higher risk as a country, and your debt gets added on to Moody's reputation about New Zealand debt, all the council debts included. It's just a guise by the government to give it a different name, but it's still all debt. But we can't keep living beyond our means. We are making individuals pull in our belts and live on next to nothing, is what I'm seeing at the moment as an accountant, and yet I don't see the council doing the same thing, and I believe a lot of the costs of this upgraded infrastructure could be done out of the operating budget, and we just borrow for the pipe, because you can't fund a wastewater treatment in 1 year. Like, I understand that, I understand the role of debt, but it needs to be depreciated, and then that money needs to be put aside for the depreciation, so that when that needs replacing in 10, 15 years, the money is sitting there. It's just a fallacy, the cash accounting that goes on in councils.
Councillor
Thank you.
Kia ora, Diane. Thank you for your submission. My partai is just, I suppose, might be just a bit broader, and I've asked it before, is that there's a wider range of reform and legislations that are coming through at the moment that will have a serious impact in terms of the revenue that council is able to receive or generate from services and stuff like that. You've just mentioned that, why can't money come out of operations? If that ends up being severely restricted, what other means do you believe council would have?
By looking at what it does and putting water as number one. We cannot survive without water. You can plant gardens, you can build a marina, you can dredge the harbour, but if we can't drink the water and adequately deal with the effluent, both stormwater and human waste, it is irrelevant whether you've got a harbour or a boat park or gardens or anything in this town, a council building, councillors, we'll all be dead. You know, you've got to look at your first priority, and it's ugly and it's not sexy, but everything the council does for the next 10 years should have water at the front of it.
Supplementary. So a lot of what council has to do in terms of operations is the mitigation of litigation, I guess, in terms of compliance, in terms of being able to assure that we adapt to all the legislations that come through. And granted, we have massive amounts of cost that is tied up in unfunded mandates every time legislation is changed. So if we cut back, say we get rid of libraries, we get rid of swimming pools, we get rid of sports parks and everything else like that, is that what you would be happy to support?
No, I just think you should have a swimming pool that looks like a swimming pool today. And you're talking about one of my other passions. I've fought for swimming pools for years in Tauranga before I moved. All I'm saying is there are so many nice to haves. I'm not saying shut the swimming pool, don't upgrade it. Don't upgrade things, keep them as they are. One of New Zealand's problem is legislation and bureaucracy. I wish David Seymour would do what he said and fix it, because it feels like nothing's happening. But it is a huge burden on New Zealand. It's unproductive and it gets us nowhere. But I'm damn sure if I came in here and did a time and motion study of all of your staff, I could find operational savings. I absolutely believe that to the bottom of my heart, that there would be millions of dollars we could save. I see men, I live on the edge of Sullivan Lake, some man drives up in a double cab ute with a trailer on the back, he drives around, he picks up 3 twigs, half an hour later he leaves, 2 days later he drives that damn twin cab ute back, picks up a couple more branches. It's ridiculous, the cost that you're bearing. If only you went out and watched your people working, who are probably consultants, who I believe most of your maintenance people are on $95 an hour, I heard recently. The money you could save. We can't behave like that in the private sector. We wouldn't have a job. Yeah, I think you are using bureaucracy and people sitting in offices as an excuse. And I've seen it with the stormwater issue that we're going through with the consent. I'm just blown away by the number of people involved in that who will be on salaries way in excess of $100,000, and still consultants get employed.
No, thanks for that. In a recent study, one of the councils, which is relative to the size of us, was able to calculate that 2.5% of their rates was the amount that was spent on unfunded mandates in terms of compliance and everything that they had to do with legislation. So it's interesting to hear that you say that it's purely just on operations or staff. Thank you.
Well, unfunded mandate work is still part of what the rates are, and you have to bear it, but there can be some costs that I believe that you can change. And at 2.5%, I don't think that's going to make or break the council. I think you need to be looking at the things that are costing you a lot more than that and look really seriously.
Sorry, that was 2.5% in the rate, in the rate itself.
Yep.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dianne. It is a challenge that we face, and we're not hiding away from it either, I'd have to say. And the biggest challenge is that rates is our sort of main income, and we don't. And you're right, we don't collect enough.
No.
So yeah, we've got to manage that somehow or other. And I agree with the borrowing. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, you can borrow 500%, but you've got to pay it back. And so
and a lot of interest. A lot of interest, which is unproductive. Yep. It's, you guys are in such a difficult position, and I think I'm trying to make that clear at the beginning. I don't envy you. It's a very, very difficult position, but I am totally opposed to the whole of New Zealand indebting the future further. The has to stop. And the only place that I can voice that is here. And
So I think, I believe our staff do a great job. It's hard to pick anything in isolation because they do lots of stuff, I suppose. But we've taken on board what you've said and appreciate your time. And thank you for taking that time to
perfect.
come and talk
Thank
to
you.
us. Thank you.
I hope for the water because I don't know what's happening at Aholpi Beach, but you won't have tourism if that sludge keeps turning up. And I suspect if you got it tested, maybe it comes from your river. You know, there's a lot of things happening that come back to water, and water is life. Yeah.
It is, but of course we've got other things as well, so we've got to try and manage that.
You have nothing if you don't have life.
Okay, so Andrew, any comments to finish off?
I think, Chair, you've heard the submitters. You've adopted your recommendations of receiving the hearings submissions today and the written submissions. Walter's here. He'll take into account what people have said today and the material that's been tabled, and he's working on analysis of all the submissions for your report that you'll get for your meeting at IPC on the 26th of June, where you can deliberate. You'll get a background on the consultation and engagement and make a recommendation on the way forward for a water services delivery plan. Thank you.
Thank you. So once again, submitters, thank you for taking the time to bring your presentations. We've taken those on board, as we say, and deliberations will be on the 26th, as Andrew said. So that concludes our meeting. I'll just invite Councillor Rangiaho to give us a closing karakia. Thank you, Councillor.
Kia tau kia tātou katoa te atawhai o tō tātou arakia i Ukraiti. Me te aroha o te atua me te whiwhina tahi tāna ki te wairua tapu. Ake ake, āmini. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.